Welcome back. What's the best way to measure the strength or weakness of our economy? Here's what you need to know. The most used metric is GDP, a crude figure that is a measure of total economic output, or all the goods and services produced in one year. Its components are consumption or household spending, investment by business, but including new housing, government spending, including infrastructure, and net exports, which is exports minus imports. GDP may be a useful benchmark against ourselves over time or against other countries, but it has its weaknesses. It doesn't capture unpaid work like household labor or volunteering, or the underground market, which is worth tens of billions. It also misses quality of life and metrics that matter, like income distribution and sustainability. And like any blunt instrument, GDP can be misleading. Economic activity is seen as only good, but if it's rebuilding infrastructure after a devastating event like a fire or a flood, it's hardly a positive. And per capita GDP, which gets a lot of attention, is even more misleading. Sudden increases in immigration, as happened in Canada in recent years, makes per capita GDP look worse in the short term, ignoring that immigration tends to lead to higher growth within a few years. StatsCan has developed the quality of life framework, 91 indicators organized into 5 domains: prosperity, good governance, health, society, and the environment. GDP per capita is included in the prosperity category, but it's one of many factors, and some of the others are highly subjective. The biggest weakness of GDP as a measure, though, is it's old school and fails to capture digital value, including the huge benefits of free services like Google or Wikipedia, and also the use of digital tools in the creator economy. Maybe the problem with how we see the Canadian economy lies with how we measure it. So how does Canada stack up on measures that go beyond GDP? Jim Stanford is director of the Centre for Future Work. Jim, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure, Amanda.
This has stirred up a lot of debate because we've all seen the headlines that Canada on a per capita basis is as poor as Alabama. Is GDP even a number to look at is where I want to start with you. Are we measuring it in the right way?
Well, I think your introduction highlighted some of the cautions that we have to keep in mind when we think about GDP. But GDP is clearly a relevant and important indicator. It shows you the total value of goods and services produced for money in the economy. And that's important and it's worth keeping track of. What you should never, ever, ever do, though, Amanda, is assume that that is the scorecard against which your whole performance as a society is measured. That is quite wrong. GDP alone does not tell you the full story about what we're producing, what we're using it for, and who gets what. Those things are all incredibly important to quality of life, and the GDP number alone doesn't tell you about those.
It sure doesn't, and it also, of course, misses huge swaths of the economy. I had a hard time distilling that into a few words, but it really is an enormous part of what we're not capturing. And maybe, Jim, I find that interesting because it leads me to wonder whether that's the gap we feel, where life's pretty good here, and yet we're told that our GDP metrics are poor.
Yeah, I think that's true. And frankly, I mean, we operate in a very politicized environment, don't we, Amanda? And so different folks will use different metrics and kind of weaponize them in different ways, depending on the moment and what they're fighting for. And I do think that's a big part of this infatuation we've seen with GDP per capita and how Canada supposedly ranks at the bottom of the industrialized world by that metric. And it's just wrong, and it's clearly ideologically motivated over the past few years as our political debates became more polarized. So I think it's important to choose the right metric, address the right questions with those metrics, and then think carefully about the context in which the debate is unfolding.
Of course, one reason to understand our economy is that when our leaders make policy decisions, Jim, we understand why they're being made and how they apply. In our country, of course, GDP can be skewed by a couple of big categories, right? We are a huge producer of resources, especially oil and gas. We have a huge financial sector. Are we actually measuring kind of the real value of the work that most Canadians do day in and day out?
Not necessarily, and we may be undervaluing things that either don't exchange money in the course of it. You mentioned care or labor in our homes and our communities. That's a very important part of our quality of life. It can include things that don't really matter to the average Canadian, and this is really important, I think, Amanda, in international comparisons. When you're looking at per capita GDP across different countries, you really have to look deep at what is showing up in those GDP numbers in other countries. A great example is Ireland. There's all kinds of commentators who say Canada should imitate Ireland because Ireland's per capita GDP is twice as high as Canada's, and it is very high. But anyone who's been to Ireland, and I have, it's a wonderful country. It's not rich. The average Irish person doesn't live any better than the average Canadian. that GDP number is skewed because of all the big global companies like Microsoft and Meta and Google and so on that have set up in Ireland to take advantage of low corporate tax rates. So the profits that they book in Ireland show up as Irish GDP, but the average Irish person hardly gets any of it. So both what it counts and what it doesn't count, GDP is a measure that has to be used with great caution.
And of course, there is the fact that we can be the same size as a country in GDP, but actually use our resources totally differently. Are we doing a good job in Canada on that front? And by that, I mean, we can look at kind of comparably sized nations with similarly sized economies that do much better on healthcare, or better at looking after their citizens in other ways. Could Canada be better with what it has rather than worrying about having more?
We certainly could, and there's no doubt about it. Now, I think in the grand comparison, Canada does relatively good. Here's one way that you could measure that. The United Nations has a measure, kind of like you mentioned, the one from Statistics Canada, that tries to measure quality of life. They call it the Human Development Index, and they use GDP per capita or something quite like it as one of the components, but they also look at healthcare and life expectancy and education and inequality. And if you look at where Canada stands by the UN's Human Development Index, we rank more highly than we do according to GDP alone. So what that means is we're punching above our weight in terms of taking our GDP and translating it into actual human well-being. Other countries, the United States in particular, but some other countries that are high on GDP per capita, like Singapore, for example, or the Gulf states, which are very rich on per capita GDP, they underperform. Their human development is much lower than you would think, given the size of their GDP. So that's one kind of broad way to show that Canada's efforts through our tax system, our public healthcare system, our mostly public education system, other measures to address inequality and lift living standards are relatively good, but they could be much, much better. And even by the United Nations standard, which is broader, Canada has been slipping. We're now 16th in that ranking. And I think given our potential and our resources and our social capital, really, we could be doing better.
We've got to leave it there, Jim. So good to have you for this. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Jim Stanford is the director of the Center for Future Work.